Welcome back, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer 1745, and we are looking at the Endsieg mod, the 1910 start for Hearts of Iron 4. But before we do that, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel and, of course, like the videos and post comments below. I was just asked by Ari, what do I think about the first 2 years of the game? Fine. The techs seem fine. You know, little minor. I do really think things like some of these should be starting techs for a nation like Germany. It might very well mean pushing things that are, you know, many years in advance just because you might as well. I do think these doctrines not having a year date, particularly when we're like looking here, we're going to be down into here before the war starts, might be a little bit of a bad organization for the what's going on in the world yet. The Chinese Revolution, which I did think started in 1910, the Republic of China versus the Queen Imperial China. Other minor stuff going on. I think Italy maybe was a little quicker in taking this, but there was a protracted guerrilla movement against Italian occupation there for sure. So far so good. Don't know why we get that weird sort of popping super horse to normal size horse there. No, this is Endsieg. We had technical difficulties with Black Ice, so we needed to change it. Sorry. Sky for just. Well, Gamer, I will say that the infantry doctrines don't finish it, as in don't do the light bulb. You get rid of a lot of the entrenchment and likes. It can make it the war harder for you. So it does have sort of a anti-World War II doctrine if you were in World War I, because it would hurt you during the war. Sort of understanding those statements. Well, yeah, I figured getting down here to the World War II type stuff would be there. I don't know. This seems very focused on defense, which is fine. We were still just in 1912. I have played the Great War mod. It's been a while. There is a series on the channel if you want to watch it sometime. I, know the guys a little bit who created. They're working on their own game version thing now, right? My understanding still. More than just a mod. Okay, so we have our Ostafrika Schutztruppen here. Let's move you. Oh, we don't need to come under Lorpak. There we go. Yeah, I know the mountain troopers may be here, but they're better defense in the building the port. Well, Well, 400 days, construction speed. Yeah, we'll just do that. I like the Great War mod. These are these. Okay, well, construction effort. Let's, since he's maxed out.
Ausrücken!
Direct approach. That's an interesting idea. Hadn't even thought of that. Yeah, I don't think yet, Arno. Let's wait till at least 1913. Because we want to build up our industry before then. Okay. Yeah, let's grab one more. Civilian factory before we shift back over. But it's a good idea. It just, I'm going with the basic presumption that the Archduke doesn't get assassinated until 1914, and then we'll have a bit of time from their early infantry equipment. I wish this would pop up and pause. Okay, yeah, this is the the picture here is the Russian 1910 Maxim machine gun. This here is the later weapon that they're using is the German MG08. So it's the 1908, 2 years earlier, German Maxim machine gun. So just sort of interesting. Oh, we could do division training time, civilian factory, captain of industry. I think we have enough that are focus on civilian industry production. Okay, so let's look at yes, training time will be no, not based on the Schwarzschluss. Schwarzschluss is after the Maxim. Rebuilding the Navy. Is this a bug or just lack of stuff? Okay, probably lack of stuff there. Oh yeah, no, it's the main competitor for the Maxim gun was the Nordenfeldt gun. So, because the Maxim gun goes back to the, I think the 1880s. I think it's 1888 The early Maxims. Now it's just like nations like Britain. Oh, we're buying 30 of these or 130 or something like that. They're not like producing a lot or cranking them out and sending them out to the colonies. You can look at Rudyard Kipling's poem about the Maxim gun. And so no need to be sorry. Yeah, no, the Maxim is the classic, and the Nordenfelt. If you guys don't know, it can be built in multiple configurations, but it's a series of barrels, horizontally out there, like 4, 6, 8 barrels, something like that, and you have a hand lever that fires, and then you crank it, you fire it, and so every time you crank and you have to hand move it to fire a volley of bullets out there. So it like fires 8 shots at once, you crank it, fires another 8 shots, crank, boom, so as fast as you can crank the thing back and forth to load and unload the Nordenfelt. Yeah, the Nordenfelt gun, the biggest advantage of my understanding of the Nordenfelt gun, it didn't jam as much as the earlier Gatling gun that you're probably more familiar with, from the American inventor Gatling. That was a rotating barrel system that would jam up. Its feed was the biggest problem with it, I think. And it was Maxim who comes up with the truly mechanical loading setup of the Maxim gun that just outdoes everything else. He came to Europe to invent things and talked to somebody and said, hey, the best thing you can do is invent something for these Europeans to kill each other faster with. So he creates the Maxim gun so the Europeans can kill each other faster with. Yeah, we'll do some of this. Just get this out of the way. Don't know much about the Schwarzschluss development. Obviously, it's primarily used in Austria, or Austro-Hungarian Empire. Other nations do adopt it, I know. It's not a bad gun as far as I know, but it's definitely a bit of a later development. Now you have, okay, Kingdom of Italy joins the Balkan League. Okay, there's, yeah, the 1912 wars or whatever are happening here now. Let's slow this down just a bit. Treaty signed, okay. Oh, interesting. Okay. Where was I at? I forget. Oh, well. Something about Maxim Nordenfelts. Okay, you're going to be stationed here in the east. Yes, let's put you up here to be the sort of hammer hitting on the Russians.
Zum Ausrücken.
Dutch used them in 1940. They were still very effective, shooting more than rounds without having chain barrels, and even the Germans used them because they were still reliable. Yeah. Well, the Dutch, sorry. The Dutch were used their World War One or their pre-World War One equipment for World War Two. just watched a 3-part, each approximately hour, on the Belgian rifles, stuff done by Sea and Arsenal. Very good documentaries on their use. And so, yeah, the Belgian army was using entirely outdated equipment for World War II, but it doesn't make it ineffective. Their bullets were, the pre-World War I style bottlenose bullets that weren't so great, but they worked. Their machine guns were the Schwarzlose that works. Germany, when they get there, most of the a lot, I would say, of the Schwarzlose that Germany gets a hold of from Austria and whatnot in the Balkans, they rechambered into the German caliber. It's a decent machine gun setup. To the best of my knowledge, it's not nearly as good. It's not as good as the Maxim. It's just different. The Maxim and the Schwarzlose, their biggest problems is they're heavy. They're heavy. And so they're not, good on a flexible battlefield. Democratic candidate Woodrow Wilson has won a sweeping victory across the United States today, an electoral victory of that William Howard Taft, who is running for re-election, however, only managed to win 8 electoral votes, being third after Roosevelt, who won 88 electoral votes. Okay, let's give a little bit of a history lesson. Yes, water-cooled barrels is part of it, not the entirety of the weight problems for the Schwarzlose and the Maxim. Okay, we had Woodrow Wilson, current hero of the current Democratic Party. Lots of schools are named after him, especially a lot of schools that black children go to. And so he is and what he is the first real progressive Democrat president that I know of. And so you have in here, you have Taft, who loses terribly here. Taft is a liberty-minded capitalist type traditional Republican. And his two opponents, one being Wilson, the other being a former Republican president, Theodore Roosevelt. Don't know, there's maybe somebody around here who's heard of Theodore Roosevelt, but he may have split out of here. I don't know if he's still around. Theodore Roosevelt was also a progressive. He starts the progressive movement sort of at the top end, if you will, the first progressive president. But he's a Republican. Perhaps, so he's here still around. So Theodore Roosevelt is a progressive as well. So Wilson and Roosevelt are both progressives. One a Republican, one a Democrat. I think, well, there's definitely differences between Roosevelt and Wilson. Wilson has much more dictatorial instincts and really wants to push progressivism very hard. Think of progressivism as, progressives I mean, we all talk about progress. I mean, they capture a word that, progress. We're making progress. Like on our journey from here to here, we're making progress. We're making progress on building the road. We're making progress on updating our technology. Progress sounds good. But the progressives are specifically set up as a alternate way to communism. Marx believed in class conflict and revolution. So in Marxism, you have, the saying, the bourgeoisie will sell the rope to hang themselves, that will be used to hang them with. You see in Marxist revolutionary thought that you will have the proletariat, the working masses, rise up out of the factories and overthrow the current establishment. That's Marxist clear thought. The progressive goes, that would be really bad. Whether they believe in that Marx is right in that is the future. Marx is a historian who badly misreads history, badly understands history. And when I say understands, doesn't mean that he doesn't he may be able to rattle off place names, war dates, who's in charge when better than I can. I'm not saying that, but he doesn't understand humanity and why people do things. So he doesn't understand history. He sees everything, basically everything, through the economic lens. And that, I mean, he understands there's other motivations. That's why he says religion is the opium of the masses. He doesn't believe in religion. Now, of course, he's spreading his own religion of Marxism, but he means the belief in God and rewards in the hereafter as opposed to rewards here and now. His religion is rewards here and now, not like you get to suffer in this life to go into heaven in the next. It's, hey, this life should be wonderful now. Okay, so whether the progressives think Marx is wrong or just think Marx, that would be bad. So instead of keep going as we are and then having that revolution that Marx predicts is going to happen, they may believe that that's going to happen. But instead of doing that, what if we progressively start moving towards socialism, which that's sort of Marx's communist socialism kind of thing. If we start progressively going towards it, make progress towards communism. And progressives, and a lot of people will go, progressives aren't communists, meaning they're not necessarily Marxists. And I would agree that progressives don't believe in the ultimate equality that Marxism champions, in the sense that they don't think that everyone needs to have the same size of apartment. We're going to have apartment model 1A. And if you are maybe if you're living in the presidential palace, you get better. But if you're the former president, when your term comes up, you get you're appointed, let's say, for 4 years in the Soviet system of whatever. After your 4 years are up, you go back to living in the same size of the apartment as the factory worker living next to you. That's the ideal of Marxism, is everybody is equal. It's the same size of apartment. Everybody does. Everybody gets, if you're a farmer, well, either you are working on a big Soviet factory farm, or you each have the exact same size or quality, because sometimes land quality varies, but the same quality of farm as every other farmer. No farmer gets to have a bigger farm. No farmer gets to have a smaller farm. If one farm has a tractor, all farms have a tractor. If all farms can't have a tractor, well, then we'll have a government tractor that gets loaned out to the different farms as can be. No one is above anyone else economically in communism. That is the ideal. Hey, Scooter. Good to have you here. So that is the ideal of communism. And I don't think you can correct me because I'm not wrong. That's an ideal. Notice I'm saying ideal, not what's ever been in practice. They believe in the idea of equality, everything equally fair. Now, of course, to me, that is a horrid idea. That is an evil idea. Now, the idea that not wanting people to starve, oh yeah, that's a good idea, but once you have basic living conditions that we consider good for people in your country, then I don't care if somebody has $25 billion and 20 private jets. I don't care, so long as people are reasonably well taken care of. I don't care what the top looks like or what the middle class looks like. You may be poor, but if you're living a decent quality of life, now, of course, there are places in the world people aren't living decent qualities of life. Absolutely. And some of them are in communist systems like North Korea or China or Vietnam. And see how well that's worked out for them and compare communist China to Taiwan. Things are better in Taiwan for the average person, the average poor person, shall we say. The average poor person, things are better in Singapore and Taiwan than they are in China. So that's that. Now, the progressives, I don't think most progressives truly believe that communism of pure equality is either the goal or a good thing. But they do believe in socialism, and they do believe in the common ownership of the means of production held collectively. So meaning the factories or meaning the microphone that I have here doesn't belong to me, because this microphone I have here is a means of producing this video. And so this can't belong to me because this microphone is the means of production. That's what they say. They say the means of production needs to be held collectively. I can't own this microphone. Now, I could own this microphone if I was just making Zoom calls to you, but since I'm making videos with it, it is a means of production. This is where part of their ideology just falls completely apart, because they want to think of it because they saw it, Marx saw it in the 19th century, and they saw the means of production as some big super factory that we can't own. Where in the 18th century, most production is happening locally at a blacksmith or a wagon coachmaker making one wagon at a time. So somebody else could easily get enough saws and wood and chisels and whatnot and start making the wagons themselves or whatever. The means of production were easier for people to obtain as they saw it compared to the 19th century, that very few people could just decide to build a big factory. But where are the means of production? But progressives still believe that the means of production belong collectively to the community. But I would say because progressivism is an elitist ideology, but he is a progressive. And I don't know that progressivism in the 1900s is vastly different than current ones either, because they're pretty damn radical back then. I mean, Woodrow Wilson is one of the most radical presidents America's ever had. And that includes FDR and Barack Obama. He is up there with them. But no, Theodore doesn't go as extreme as Wilson. But is that because he thinks Wilson is going too fast? Or he just doesn't go as far as Wilson? I don't know. And I have not read all of, because Theodore Roosevelt was a prolific writer. I've not read his works. I don't know if you have either, Ari. But there's a lot to Roosevelt, and I don't know. I mean, I know a lot about Roosevelt, but I don't know Roosevelt in detail. So but I do understand the progressives. So the progressives, again, is an elitist movement. So they believe that they're going to, in this new world, generations from now, from 1910 or 1912 or whatever date you want to look at, that they and whoever else will be elites, and they'll still get to be elites, not super rich elites, in that they live in because this is before income tax happens. Income tax comes in under Woodrow Wilson. So you have these like Andrew Carnegie and other super rich Americans. No, they don't. It's not like that. You don't get to be that kind of wealthy, but you get to be more wealthy than the average person. You get to be better off than the average person if you're an elite under the progressive system. But they definitely believe in the collective ownership of the means of production. So the factory manager, because it's owned by the government, will have a nicer home, while his workers will live in an okay apartment. That's what they believe is an eventuality, not the reality of the day, but where they want to progress to. So it isn't quite the exact leveling of Marxism, but it is definitely a socialist, communistical vision. And Theodore Roosevelt holds this viewpoint. Theodore Roosevelt is a progressive. Again, I'm not sure if he goes as far as Wilson goes, but he definitely doesn't go want to go as fast as Wilson goes. Makes a lot of citizens lazy. Why try? No reason to. Absolutely, Scooter. No, communism is an evil philosophy. I keep running into people. Well, we all agree it would be best if everything was equal and fair, if that was even possible. No. It's bad, because as Scooter is saying about is, you want to, well, if I work harder, smarter, a little bit better, do something a little bit better, I can have a nicer bicycle in Denmark than the other people, because we only get to have bicycles in Denmark because we're Denmark, or the Netherlands or wherever, that they want to ban automobiles and just have bicycles, but I get to have a nicer bike than somebody else. That's the idea, that competitiveness, of the ability to get ahead without permission of, well, would you please approve my new patent, or my new local bakery, or my new local bicycle production design, or my new whatever. I have to go to because the progressives want to have everything administrative. Wilson very much puts into America the administrative state that we still have. They want to you need a license for that from the government. Whatever that is, you need a license for it, kind of thing. And so you need to get permission from the government to do whatever. Where a non-progressive believes, hey, do what you want. Now, they agree with something like Roosevelt is putting into place before Wilson comes in, is like truth in advertising laws. You can't say that this thing cures baldness. Pour this on your head, it's going to cure baldness, if it doesn't cure baldness. You can't do false advertising. Because there used to be what they call, in America, I know some of you might not be familiar, snake oil. And it was just sort of a bunch of random ingredients, often with an alcoholic base, that people would go around and claim would cure things, make you stronger, better, whatever. You drink this, you'll get better. Snake oil salesman. And you can look at this time period of all kinds of different machinery, all kinds of different drugs that claim to do all kinds of stuff for you. Well, they start putting in, truth in advertising laws and things like that, it was pretty bad then, and society's developing. You need things like that to happen, so that you have some levels of regulation. But you don't need to get permission from the government to make a new bicycle, something like that. Now, we do have, in modern world, safety standards for automobiles. So when they smash into each other, we know there at least some level of safety standards. You may everybody still dies depending on the speed of the accident and the situation, but maybe not, because there's some level of, oh, it's just, yeah, snake oil, absolutely. Yeah, everything from A to Z, absolutely. Yeah, well, maybe. You see, Roosevelt wasn't an evil guy at heart, as far as I know. Unlike Wilson, I've gone down the rabbit hole. Anybody who's watching, and the rest of this episode, not the live stream, but the rest of this episode is going down this rabbit hole. We'll get to the evils of Wilson. No, he wasn't. Yeah, Theodore Roosevelt wasn't bad, but what he does is he brings progressivism, particularly into the Republican Party, where it is still going on in the Republican Party. Oh, and a lot of the people who are anti-Trump in the Republican Party are progressive Republicans, often called nowadays neocons. But that's another story. And so it's more, not so much, Theodore Roosevelt and his than his trust busting, meaning also his, monopoly busting kind of thing. That's good. Now, he's doing it for the wrong reasons, I think. He's doing it for progressive reasons, I think. Again, I'm not the best expert on Roosevelt. I mean, I've read about him, watched biographies on him on television and whatnot, but not the best expert on him. But if you're like me that believes in free markets, they need to, what one element needs to be? Oh, free. So you can't have monopolies, whether government monopolies or private monopolies. If you have only one person owning all the railroads, whether across your nation or just in one area, or only one automobile manufacturer exists, that's a monopoly. That is bad. You need competitiveness to have a free market. That has to be there. So, yeah, a lot of what Roosevelt does do is good, but he opens the door to Wilson. Okay, so Wilson is a historian who actually writes, he's a historian, and he actually writes that it is bad to look at original source material. It is better to just look at other people's writings about history and then write your own things about the history. So he wants to rewrite history. He doesn't want to care about original source material. Wilson is also like I did say, there's schools, high schools, junior high schools, Wilson institutes around that are mostly all Democratic institutions, but Wilson is a big supporter of the Ku Klux Klan and racism, or well, anti-black, shall we say. I don't know what he thought about Asian people or some other group of people, but he is firmly believes in racism. The United States Armed Forces by this time have been desegregated. Now, I don't think there are many people going to West Point or Annapolis that are black. I don't know if there were or weren't. But yeah, most of it was still a white officer class. But the armed forces had been desegregated. Until Wilson gets back in and segregates them, that you don't have desegregation in the armed forces until the Korean War because of Wilson segregation policies. So one of the major differences between Roosevelt and Wilson, Roosevelt is for desegregation and racial equality before the law, not equality like in everybody gets the same amount of stuff, just equality before the law. Against Roosevelt is against the idea of Jim Crow laws in the South. Roosevelt trumpets the Jim Crow laws of the South. So they're both progressive. One is a racist progressive. One is a non-racist progressive. That is some of their major differences. Now, Roosevelt is a very strong American nationalist. Wilson is not. Wilson is an internationalist. So you sort of get the idea here that this was a competition between two progressive movements, if you will. Fast progressiveness under Wilson, slow progression under Roosevelt. And so, as well as racism and other things. Taft represents the sort of traditional American, that of Lincoln, that of very, what we would probably call libertarian today. Probably some of the falling down of Taft, and I don't know specifically, but maybe his allowance of big business to be overly controlled of things. And there was a lot of popularity. There was massive hatred against the railroads in America. Railroads were seen as, because everybody interacts with railroads in some way or another, where they don't all interact with say mining concerns somewhere or whatever, but to get your goods moved around, if you're a small business, need to do it on the railroads. You need to move anywhere significant, you need to go on the railroads. The railroad wants to come through your property, they're coming through your property if you're a landowner. They don't care. They're going to find a way to get your land. They're going to get the government to condemn it, to give it to them if you don't sell it to them. They're going to do whatever they can. They're coming through their property. Now, maybe you can sell because it's easier for them to, depending on the railroad company or whatever, but it's often maybe easier for them to buy your land at an inflated price than it is to go through other means to get your land. So you do have a chance to make some money if the railroad's coming through, if you want to sell your land, but they're coming through. And so everybody hates railroads. Now, they all use railroads because they're a fantastic, wonderful new device, but they hate the railroad companies in America. And with, Theodore Roosevelt breaking up some of the trusts, the monopolies that were associated with the railroads, and Carnegie's Steel and some of the others that I'm blanking on names. Stuff is a Fox News word. I think they have a monopoly on it. Well, Fox News is probably the best major news corporation in America. So I know, OCB, you're a European. I think Europeans get a very slanted view of what really Fox News is. Most of the people who have a negative opinion of Fox News don't watch Fox News and don't know what it is. They just hear things about it. I watch Fox News a few hours a day. And I don't agree or like all the hosts on it, and some of them are very sort of opinionated, but they are probably the news agency most in touch with reality in America. So, yeah. So Wilson is a very pivotal person in American politics and has definitely messed the country up very, very badly. And so congratulations, Wilson. Probably, because I disagree with a lot of what FDR, the other Roosevelt, did. But I think FDR, who did like the administrative state, very much so, but FDR truly has a good heart. FDR truly wants to, he runs over a lot of people, and it's not just that FDR is charming, and Wilson is not charming. He's very much not charming. Wilson is also a major, major sexist too, but I almost said, but most people were back then. No, he is beyond what most people were back then as sexist. He is beyond that as well. Though, of course, with Wilson, you end up having a woman running the government, because the latter part of Wilson's life, he's a vegetable in bed, and she's basically walking over with whatever document she wants to have him sign, holding his hand and guiding his hand to sign the signature. So yes, it was Wilson's hand that signed the signature, and his heart was still beating, but he wasn't mentally there. And for a long period of time, no congressperson or other, senator or House of Representatives was allowed to meet with the president. And that's how they come up with what they talk about now the 25th Amendment because of what happened under Wilson and being a stroke or whatever towards the end. So she ends up, his wife ends up running, who he marries later on, ends up running the government for a while. But yeah, he is probably the most evil American president. Yeah, probably. Change my mind. Somebody. But yeah, that's Wilson for you. The hero of the modern. And this isn't, because sometimes you go, oh, well, yeah, that was Democrats way back when that believe that. No, I'm talking about he is the hero of modern day Democrats. Yeah, because he starts the progressive state for the Democrats. Well, like I said, this is going to be the end of the episode, but not the live stream again. So if you guys want to hang around, we will stay off of these topics because I got it out of my system and move ahead.